Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to be diving into Swift Playgrounds, an amazing tool from Apple to practice and learn Swift. Whether you're just starting out or want to experiment with Swift concepts in a fun interactive way, Swift Playgrounds is perfect for you. Let's explore how to get started. So if you want to head over to the App Store, this is one way that you can actually access Swift Playgrounds. If you go to the search and you type Playgrounds, you'll see this orange bird here, and from this bird you can either open it if you already have it installed or press get. But this is actually a place where you can go through some guided projects that are made available from Apple to help you learn Swift concepts, kind of learn to code. A lot of these books actually go together with the Learn to Code series, so this is something that you can access completely for free. You can also access this particular version of Swift Playgrounds on an iPad, so if you do have one and want to explore it there, you totally can. I like to do some of these coding challenges sometimes in bed or when I'm waiting in the airport or something like that. So let's go ahead and open up this version of Swift Playgrounds. So we do have some apps here, and all of these would be synced from my iPad via iCloud, which is really great. So any progress that you make on your Mac, if you do have that iPad, you'll be able to share it there. If you do not have any playgrounds, you can either create your own app by pressing the plus button in the bottom left here, or you can press this See All button, and from there you will be able to access any of the playground activities. The Get Started with Code and Get Started with Apps do follow along with the Everyone Can Code books. I'll talk a little bit more about those at the end of today's lesson. But anytime you want to download them, just like with the App Store, you'll just press the Get button. So let's say we want to do the Choose Your Own Story, and it'll go ahead and download and appear in my playgrounds. So these are really great. They're all kind of guided projects that you can work on. They're quite fun, and they teach you kind of the fundamentals of Swift. Now, let's say we wanted to access a different kind of form of playgrounds, and we can actually do that through Xcode. So if you want to go ahead and open up Xcode, I'm currently running version 16.0, so if you have an older or perhaps newer version, it might look a little bit different than mine. The way you can access playgrounds is if you can see on my right side here, any that you've previously worked on, you can open them quickly here. Otherwise, to start a new fresh playground from a blank or perhaps a template, you can navigate to the top left of your screen while Xcode's open. You'll see that I have my little Apple symbol, Xcode, and we're actually going to go to File, New, and from there we're going to select Playground. Once you've done that, you will be able to access and create a new playground. Again, there are some templates, so I'm currently on blank, but there is the game, map, and a single view. For our purposes today, we're just going to be going over the blank template. So let's go ahead and press Next. From here, this is where you can create your playground. I already do have some made, but I typically recommend saving this in a spot that you'll remember. I have the habit of saving most of my things on my desktop just so they're always there for me to see. If you do need to create a new folder, you can also do so here, and we can give it a name. So I'm going to call this one My First Playground. Once everything looks great, I'm going to go ahead and press the Create button. Once that's been done, you'll see that we're greeted with this blank canvas. Alright, and welcome to our blank template here. We do have a little bit of code added where we've imported UIKit. So if you are planning on exploring some UIKit functions in Xcode, you can experiment with them here, as well as a variable greeting equals hello playground. We're just going to be starting off with a completely blank Swift file. So if you want to either Command A or highlight and delete all the code here, feel free to do so. We're going to start off with the most simple coding program. Typically, if you do learn a new language, you'll learn the Hello World program. So let's go ahead and create that today while we're exploring some features of the playground. So what we can do is we can declare a constant, we can give it a name and then a data type. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do that by typing in let, and let's call it greeting, space, equals, and then we're going to add some quotation marks to make it a string. So we will say hello world. You'll also notice that you actually only have to add the first quotation mark and then begin typing your string. It will wrap it in the other quotation mark. If you're not sure what a string is, I have some videos explaining data types if you want to check that out. Put simply, a string is a way that we can display text. So if we go ahead and go to the bottom left corner, you'll see that I have a play button here, and it says execute playground. This allows us to run our playground. Just as a tip, if you do want to have your playgrounds automatically run, you can press and hold on the play button and then select automatically run. This will basically run your playground anytime you make a change. It's up to you. If your Mac isn't that powerful, you might want to disable it. We're not going to be doing anything too crazy today, so I'm going to leave mine on. So now that we have our greeting, we're going to go ahead and launch our first playground. The first time you launch your playground, it might take a little bit of time. You can see the progress in the top bar. While we're waiting for that to load, I also want to kind of give you some more things that you should probably have open, and that would be the debug area or console. So if you see in the bottom right of my screen here, it kind of looks like a little square with a line at the bottom. If you press that, it will open up the console. This is where we can actually see and inspect any errors as well as any print statements. We also kind of have a live view on the right side of the screen here. So once our program has finished running, you will notice that we get to see the text "Hello World" in the right side. We can also press on this eyeball for kind of a quick look. So in a lot of coding languages, what we can do is use print statements in order to track our progress. We can use it to maybe if we're adding up score, we can print as that score is getting increased, so we can kind of track what's happening in the background. In this case, we're going to go ahead and print our message. So under the let greeting equals hello world, we can make a little bit of space with our return key, and we can type print. If you want to use the autofill feature here, you can use the return key. Otherwise, we'll add a bracket, and let's put in our greeting. Again, nice thing about the autofill feature is if we already have those variables or constants created, in this case greeting, we can actually just start typing out the word. It'll give us some suggestions on perhaps we want to include. You can also select what you're adding in with the arrow keys, or hovering and clicking on it with your mouse. Once you have what you want, in this case greeting, we'll go ahead and hit return. Our program's going to automatically run. If you don't have auto run enabled, you'll just need to press the play button in the bottom left. You'll see now in our print, in our console at the bottom there, we are now printing hello world. Pretty cool. So let's go ahead and now make a variable. If we want to establish variables, we do so with the var or var, and then we'll put the variable name. In this case, I'm going to call it name. And if you want to include your name within a string, feel free to do so. I'm just going to use mine as ndc. Let's go ahead and print that name. Again, I'm just going to select it from the menu. And just as a brief explanation on how sequencing works as well as variables work, if we actually update the name, so let's say name now equals, I don't know, Fred, that's a pretty cool name, and we print the name once again, you'll notice once our program runs in the console, that name has updated. So variables are things that change over time. We can declare it. Maybe we have a scoring system, and as the players earn more points, that variable is updating, and we can display that to the user. So in this case, we initialize my name as ndc. We've printed it. You can also track it in the right side of the screen here. And then we've changed the name to be Fred, and we've printed it, and it's updated. So the live view will also display this. So if you want to track a variable over time, you can either print it or even display it in the live view. Now let's take a look at some conditional code. So in this case, maybe we're going to check to see if someone is an adult. I think that's usually about the age of 18. So let's go ahead and create a new variable. So I'm going to say variable age equals 18. Then your most basic conditional code statement would be an if statement. So we can either type out if and go through the code column there. However, we do have the option to kind of go through a library of code snippets, which is a really great way to make sure you're not making any mistakes, or even if you want to double check. There's tons of snippets for you to enjoy in here. You can also search. So in this case, we'd be creating an if statement. And you can either double click to add the code snippet to your project, or even drag and drop. So for an if statement, we're basically saying if condition, if that condition is met, then we'll run some code. So let's say if age is greater than or equal to 18, then perhaps we would print to the user a string that says you are an adult. Our program will run, it'll say you are an adult. If we change our variable, maybe if we put it to 15, which is lower, nothing happens. If we change it to something higher, 125, that's pretty old. Maybe we'll put 25 here. It would update and say you are indeed an adult. Another good thing to test in Playgrounds are the for statements. So what we can do is we can either go to our library and add one. So let's go ahead and do that. For statement. I'm just going to double click and it's going to add to that most recent selected line of code. From here, you can create an index and a range. So a very basic example would say for I in 1.5. We use the triple dots in Swift in order to represent a range. So for the numbers for 1 to 5, we're going to print. And what we can do is we can actually do a little bit of what's called interpolation. So we can say this is loop number, and to interpolate a value into a string, we can use a / bracket, put the value, and then close the bracket. Again, my Playground's going to automatically close that bracket for me. I love how many little time-saving things there are in Swift. And we can see now in our console, hello world NDC Fred, you're an adult, and then we have our loop number in here as well. Cool. So that is a really basic example on how you can use Playgrounds. The way I like to use them is whenever I'm learning a new concept, I'll make a playground to kind of test some different things out, make sure I understand them. Sometimes if I'm running into weird logic errors in my code, I might even copy and paste that selection into a playground to kind of figure out the logic, make those fixes without disturbing my entire Xcode project. It's up to you. It's really an environment for you to test and play around in. That's probably why they call it a playground. But there's lots of other features of the playground. If you are someone who is interested in learning UIKit, Xcode, etc., there are the Learn to Code books. You can go ahead and download the Develop in Swift Explorations as well as Fundamentals book. There are a couple more in this series. I'll do my best to put a link in the description below. From there, you can go through the different chapters, learn about the different coding concepts, and there's actually some pre-made playgrounds you can follow along with in there as well. So for example, there's some from word games, which kind of help you learn a little bit more about strings. There's also, if you're learning on the more basic level, or perhaps on those playgrounds that we showed off earlier. So for example, the Get Started with Code playgrounds. These actually follow along with the Everyone Can Code Puzzles book. This is a really great place, especially for people in the more middle years, to explore their first introduction to coding. They're really fun. They go through all the concepts as well, and they have those playgrounds associated with them. So you can do a little bit of reading, a little bit of experimenting, and learn at your own pace. Swift Playgrounds is an amazing way to get hands-on with Swift. Whether you're a beginner or just want to experiment with code, it's the perfect tool to learn and practice. Make sure to try out some of the pre-built lessons and start coding your own projects. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Swift tutorials. And remember, dream big, code even bigger. Take care, everyone.